You know that feeling when things are just going a little too well in your life?
Oh, yeah, like suspiciously well.
Right. You get the big promotion at work, your relationships feel completely solid, health is great, and instead of just, enjoying it, you catch yourself looking over your shoulder.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly, just waiting for it. We've all experienced that creeping anxiety.
Yeah.
But, and this is what we're looking at today, what if the universe isn't actually lining up some terrible counterbalance to ruin your day?
What if the worry itself is the problem?
Yeah, what if the very act of worrying about bad luck is the exact mechanism that, well, pulls it into existence?
It's a huge shift in perspective because we are so deeply conditioned to believe that reality is just this objective, solid thing that happens to us. We assume the world operates completely independently of what we're thinking or feeling on the inside.
Like we're just passengers on a train watching the scenery roll by, totally separate from the landscape outside the window. But for today's deep dive, we are jumping into this incredible piece of writing that just shatters that passenger mentality. We're looking at an article titled The Observer Effect Talmudic Metaphysics and Quantum Reality by Rabbi Shlomo Izagui.
It's such a fascinating text.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to explore this mind-bending ancient framework. It's drawn from centuries-old Torah wisdom, and it suggests your attention doesn't just perceive the reality around you.
It actually constructs it.
Yes, your attention is a primary tool used to construct it.
The core tension we're exploring today is really this radical shift from a passive universe to a participatory universe.
Right.
We're looking at this trail of sources, starting with ancient rabbis, that all point to the exact same conclusion: you are a vital, active participant in building the reality you experience every single day.
So to understand how the ancients viewed this, we need to rewind a couple thousand years to the Talmudic era. There is this concept in the Talmud known as zugat.
Which translates to pairs.
Right, pairs. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's unpack this. What exactly was the deal with pairs?
Well, during that era, doing things in pairs, like, say, drinking exactly 2 cups of wine, or eating 2 distinct pieces of food that was believed to invite destructive spiritual forces.
Like just doing things in even numbers.
Yeah, pretty much. The prevailing thought was that odd numbers represented unity and the divine, while even numbers, or pairs, brought about imbalance.
Interesting.
Fragmentation, basically, and vulnerability to harm.
I mean, to a modern ear, being afraid of drinking 2 cups of wine sounds like, a simple superstition.
Sure, it sounds like that to us, but to the people of that era, these spiritual forces were considered an immediate, tangible reality.
Like actual weather.
Exactly. The metaphysical landscape was just as dangerous to them as the physical landscape. But, and this is key, that Talmud didn't just list Zugat as this unavoidable objective hazard.
It had a condition.
Right. It attached a highly unusual condition to when this danger actually applied. In the Talmud, specifically in Pesachim 110b, the rule regarding these destructive forces states, and I quote, "He who is particular about them, they are particular with him, and he who is not particular about them, they are not particular with him."
Okay, when I was reading that source, I kept thinking about how a modern social media algorithm functions today.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Because if you engage with a highly negative, polarizing piece of content on your phone, like if you watch the video, read the angry comments, get all worked up.
You become particular about it.
Exactly. If you become particular about it, the algorithm immediately feeds you more of it. It becomes your dominant digital reality.
Yep.
But if you completely ignore it, just scroll right past without a second thought, that content virtually stops existing in your feed. It has absolutely no power over your user experience.
That's spot on, because in the digital space, engagement is the currency that makes a piece of content real for the user. And in the Talmudic framework, human attention being what the text calls makpid, which means attentive and concerned, that's the currency that activates these spiritual forces.
So the danger of pairs isn't an objective, fixed property of reality?
No, not like gravity. Gravity pulls you down regardless of whether you believe in it or not. But this danger is entirely contingent on human awareness.
Wow.
And this dynamic doesn't just apply to the obscure concept of pairs. It governs a much more widely known concept, too, Einhara, the evil eye.
Oh, the evil eye. We see those little blue amulets everywhere, right? Sold in markets, hung from rearview mirror.
Everywhere, yeah.
But the actual mechanism behind the evil eye in these ancient texts, it's not really about magical curses, is it?
Not at all. According to Jewish thought, Einhar typically arises when a person becomes overly visible.
Overly visible. What does that mean practically?
It happens through sudden wealth, maybe massive public success, or receiving excessive praise.
Like sticking your head up above the crowd.
Exactly. This intense exposure draws societal attention, and that collective attention creates a kind of spiritual claim, or a kitrug, against the individual.
A spiritual claim.
Yeah, it functions like a spotlight, illuminating the person to harmful spiritual scrutiny.
Okay, but wait. Isn't that spiritual victim blaming? If someone's new business fails or they suffer a sudden loss, are we saying it's their own fault because they worried too much about the evil eye? That feels incredibly harsh.
I get why it sounds that way, but the texts are not assigning moral blame. They're describing a mechanism of metaphysical physics, basically.
Metaphysical physics, okay.
The text points to the Rashba. He was a prominent 13th century rabbi, and he emphasized that the effect of the evil eye is not absolute. He and other classical sources noted that those who simply do not concern themselves with the evil eye are not subject to it.
Really? Just not caring makes you immune?
Essentially, yes. It's a relational field between the observer and the observed. It isn't an independent, malicious force acting uniformly on everyone. Danger, in this spiritual sense, requires human awareness to activate it. The human mind is what supplies the power source through fear, concern, and focus.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second. Because in the physical world, ignorance is usually a terrible strategy.
Sure.
Like if I'm camping and I decide to simply ignore a bear walking into my campsite, that bear is still going to eat me.
Yeah, ignoring the bear does not work.
Right. My total lack of concern doesn't unmanifest the physical animal. So why does ignorance suddenly become a functional shield when it comes to Zugat or the evil eye?
What's fascinating here is that it highlights the fundamental difference between physical mechanics and metaphysical mechanics.
Okay.
The Talmudic worldview operates on the concept of spiritual resonance. Reality isn't just made of physical matter, it's composed of interacting layers.
Layers, got it.
And human thought and awareness constantly interact with these unseen dimensions. So to be particular about something, to be Maccabid, means you are tuning your mind to its specific frequency.
So the bear operates on a purely physical, biological layer. But these destructive forces operate on a frequency that requires a receiver.
Exactly. When you become preoccupied with the dangers of pairs or the evil eye, you are actively aligning yourself with the very domain where those dangers operate.
Your fear creates the bridge.
I guess. Your fear is the bridge. And when you ignore these concerns, you cancel the conditions they need to latch onto. You don't destroy the concept of the evil eye itself, but you render yourself an incompatible host for it.
Wow.
In this layered reality, ignorance is a literal shield.
That is wild. And I mean, if individual attention activates these spiritual forces, there is a massive implication for what happens if an entire society simply stops paying attention.
Oh, absolutely.
The text brings up the Tosafot, right? The school of medieval rabbis in France and Germany who lived centuries after the Talmud was compiled.
Right, the Tosafot. They rigorously analyzed Talmudic law.
Yeah.
And they actually officially ruled that Zugat, the danger of pairs, was no longer a practical concern for Jewish law.
Wait, they just officially canceled the danger? How?
They observed a fundamental shift in the lived reality of their communities. The society at large had basically stopped caring about the danger of drinking wine in pairs.
It just moved on.
Yeah. And because the collective human mindset had completely shifted away from this fear, the entire metaphysical system lost its activation condition.
So it just stopped working.
The text describes it as a dormant field. Imagine a massive, complex electrical grid where someone simply turned off the main switch.
And the switch being human consciousness.
Exactly.
So an entire society stopped being afraid of something.
Yeah.
And by doing so, they literally deactivated its power to harm them. That's incredible.
It really is. And the rabbis actually found scriptural backing for this mechanism in Psalms 116, verse 6, which states the principle of Shomer Peteim Hashem.
Shomer Peteim Hashem. What does that translate to?
It translates to the idea that God protects those who are unaware.
Wow. See, we usually think that knowing every possible danger makes us safe. But here, knowing about the danger is the precise vulnerability that allows it into your life.
Exactly. Knowledge is the vulnerability here.
And reading this ancient idea that reality is actively responding to human observation and measurement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's where it gets really interesting. It sounds suspiciously like something pulled straight out of a modern physics textbook.
It really does. We're leaping from the medieval academies of France straight into the world of subatomic particles.
Let's do it.
Because in modern quantum mechanics, there is a foundational concept known as the quantum observer effect.
Right, and to really grasp this, we have to look at how physicists understand particles. If you look at a subatomic particle, like say an electron, before it's measured or observed by a scientist, it doesn't actually have definite properties.
It doesn't have a fixed location or a set trajectory.
Right, it's just potential.
Physicists describe this state using a mathematical concept called a wave function. In this unobserved state, the electron exists in a superposition of possibilities.
Superposition, meaning it could be anywhere.
It's a wave of pure potential. It could be in location A, location B, or location C. It's a cloud of probabilities rather than a solid physical object you can just point to.
But, and this is the crazy part, the very millisecond a scientist introduces a measuring device, the second an observation occurs, that entire wave function collapses.
Instantly.
All those infinite possibilities instantly snap into one specific definite reality.
Yeah.
The electron is suddenly right there.
Yep. The act of observation is not passive.
At all.
The scientist looking at the particle plays a constitutive role in pulling it out of a state of pure potential and forcing it into a state of physical reality.
So the structural similarity between this quantum mechanics principle and the Talmudic metaphysics we just discussed, I mean, it's profound.
It's essentially the same underlying concept. In both the high-tech quantum lab and the ancient spiritual landscape, a domain of potentiality does not fully actualize until an observer engages with it.
And the source text offers this brilliant thought experiment to map this ancient wisdom directly onto quantum theory. Let's go back to the wine for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine two people sitting at a table, and each of them is drinking 2 cups of wine. Person A has studied the Talmud deeply. They know all about Zugat, they know the ancient warnings, and they are sitting there quietly worrying about the destructive forces they might be inviting by drinking in pairs.
Sweating over their second cup.
Exactly. Now, person B has never heard a Zugat in their entire life.
Wow.
They're just enjoying their 2 drinks, their mind completely focused on the pleasant conversation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, according to the Talmudic principle viewed through a quantum lens, person A's awareness has effectively measured the spiritual situation.
They took out the measuring device.
Yes. Their active concern, their focused fear, has collapsed the spiritual wave function into a defined, dangerous reality. They've drawn the potential out of the ether and made it actual in their own lived experience.
They activated the dormant field just by looking at it.
Precisely. Meanwhile, person B entirely lacks the conceptual framework. They don't possess the mental measuring device of fear or concern regarding pairs.
Well, what happens for them?
For person B, the wave function of danger never collapses. It remains diffuse, unrealized potential. The physical act of drinking 2 cups carries absolutely no significance or risk for them because their consciousness never forced the probability into reality.
So reality isn't purely objective. It's not just happening to them regardless of what they think.
No.
But it's also not purely subjective either. Person A isn't just hallucinating the danger. The danger becomes a real force in their life.
Right. It is a relational reality. The observer isn't creating the universe from scratch out of nothing, but they are absolutely participating in its configuration.
Participating in the configuration. I like that.
Human awareness serves as the bridge between the potential and the actual, between what remains hidden as a mere possibility and what becomes revealed as a concrete experience.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us today? Let's look at this realistically, because this all sounds great in a controlled thought experiment with 2 cups of wine. But human nature is messy. Suppose I'm driving to work and I check my phone at a red light, and I see that my biggest competitor just launched a highly successful product.
Oh, that's a tough moment.
Right. I feel an immediate deep pang of anxiety. I start worrying that my business is going to lose clients, that people are looking at my struggles, maybe even casting an evil eye on my declining success.
The panic sets in.
The panic sets in. The wave function collapses. Am I just completely doomed because my brain did what human brains do?
Well, no, we can't permanently erase our memories or artificially block out every negative emotion. That's just not humanly possible.
Thank goodness.
Once you know about a concept or once you feel that instinctual dread, you can't simply unknow it. But the text provides highly specific practical guidance on this from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Okay.
He frequently addressed people who were deeply concerned about the evil eye and spiritual harm.
So what is the very first thing he tells someone who feels that wave function collapsing?
His primary guidance aligns perfectly with the physics of the situation. He says you must completely divert your mind from such thoughts. Give them absolutely no attention.
Divert your mind. Okay, so in the context of the algorithm analogy we used earlier, this is where you literally force your feed to change.
Exactly.
If you realize you're dwelling on the competitor's success, you immediately put on a complex podcast, or you call a friend and ask them about their life, or you start intensely planning your weekend.
You deliberately starve the thought of the attention it needs to solidify.
Starve the thought.
Because without that sustained attention, the danger remains diffuse. Prevention lies entirely in non-engagement.
Okay.
However, the Rebbe understood human psychology. He offered a dual approach because, let's be real, what happens if you fail at diverting your mind?
Which happens a lot.
What if you are already losing sleep, deeply preoccupied with the fear that your business is under spiritual or financial attack?
In quantum terms, the fear has already measured the particle. The wave has collapsed.
Exactly. And once the engagement has occurred, you cannot just pretend it didn't happen. The negative reality is now activated.
So what do you do then?
The Rebbe advised taking tangible, physical steps to mitigate the effect within that newly activated reality. He instructed people to check their mezuzah, the parchment scrolls containing Torah verses affixed to the doorposts of Jewish homes to ensure they were kosher and properly written.
Okay.
He advised giving extra charity and actively strengthening the observance of mitzvot, or good deeds.
But wait, why those specific actions? Why does giving $5 to a food bank help counteract the evil eye on my business?
Because you are introducing a new, powerful measurement into the system.
Ah.
Ignoring the threat prevents the conditions for it to manifest. But once your attention has manifested a negative reality, you must use positive physical and spiritual actions to construct a counter-reality.
A counter-reality.
Right. Charity, in Jewish thought, is a physical act of bringing goodness and life into the world. It creates a protective spiritual resonance that directly combats the destructive resonance of fear.
I see. So going back to the social media thing, you accidentally clicked on the negative video. The algorithm is now feeding you garbage, so you aggressively start liking, sharing, and commenting on positive videos.
Yes, perfect analogy.
You're retraining the algorithm of your reality by feeding the system a completely different set of data.
You are intentionally collapsing new wave functions that favor positive outcomes. In fact, the text highlights a famous Hasidic teaching that serves as the ultimate conclusion to this entire framework: think good, and it will be good.
Think good, and it will be good. You know, on the surface, that sounds like toxic positivity.
It really
It
does.
sounds like a bumper sticker telling you to just smile through a disaster.
But in the context of Talmudic metaphysics and quantum theory, it is not a motivational slogan. It is a literal instruction manual for operating the wave function of reality.
An instruction manual.
Yes, and the text expands this beyond just personal success or avoiding bad luck. It introduces the concept of Moshiach.
Moshiach being the Messianic era,
Yeah.
right? A perfected reality of universal peace, justice, and goodness.
Exactly. Judaism views souls not as isolated, separate entities, but as interconnected nodes in a massive collective consciousness.
We're all linked.
Right. So when you actively think about Moshiach, when you focus your mental energy on visualizing and expecting a redeemed, perfected world, you are helping to attract and pull that reality into existence.
You're collapsing the wave function toward ultimate goodness.
Yes.
And I guess it starts on a personal level. Like, you choose to view a difficult coworker with compassion instead of anger. You choose to focus on the potential for healing rather than the inevitability of decline.
And because everyone is intrinsically connected, one person's mental push in the direction of goodness is never isolated.
It ripples out.
One person collapsing the wave toward a positive reality adds a concrete building block to the collective human experience. It can literally tilt the scales for the entire universe.
That is immense.
Attention is not neutral. It is deeply, fundamentally generative. You select, you define, and you bring into being the structures you perceive.
We started with an ancient, almost superstitious fear of drinking 2 cups of wine. And we've arrived at the very mechanics of how consciousness shapes the universe.
It's quite the journey.
It really points to the extraordinary foresight of the Torah and the Talmud. Long before modern science had developed the vocabulary for wave functions, superposition, and observer effects, these ancient sages fully understood that human consciousness is deeply consequential.
They really did.
They knew that we aren't just passengers looking out the window of the train. We are the ones laying down the tracks.
They articulated a vision of reality that seamlessly bridges the rational and the spiritual. It's a system that guides us in how to perceive the world, how to engage with it, and ultimately, how to take responsibility for shaping it through the sheer force of our focused attention.
We have so much power at our disposal every single moment of the day, simply based on what we allow our minds to dwell on. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder on your own. If your attention is the key that collapses the wave function of reality, turning pure potential into your actual lived experience, what invisible realities are you unwittingly bringing into existence right now, just by where you choose to focus your daily mental energy?